The Atlanta Hawks franchise was founded by Ben Kerner and Leo Ferris in 1946.
This day belonged to St. Louis. As the buzzer sounded, jubilant fans mobbed their hero Bob Pettit. The St. Louis Hawks had made their mark in basketball history with their first and only NBA championship.
I don't think so.
And here's Young. Backtracks, 5 to shoot. Young lets it go. And hits! Woo! Ice cold.
This is the official Atlanta Hawks documentary. So the Hawks have only won one championship in their career. And, they've had plenty of great players in their time. So I would say their all-time starting five is probably Trae Young at the point guard, Joe Johnson at the shooting guard, Dominique Wilkins at the small forward, Bob Pettit at the power forward, and Dikembe Mutombo at the center. So the Hawks have had some really great players. I mean, it might be early, but I think Trae's the best point guard in the Hawks history. He's their franchise point guard that they've gotten. And, they've had some runs in the past, like making the conference finals. Honestly, they've never been able to sustain a whole run. So take the 2021, for example, when they made the Eastern Conference Finals and lost to the Bucks. After that, they were mid last year, and they were good. They were good. They were pretty good. They were mid, the past 2 years. Now this year they're terrible, but they could have runs in their history. Now in 1958 they've won the title with Bob Pettit. So does that mean that he's their best player? I mean, take a look at his stats. Let's look through his stats. His best seasons were with the Hawks, which is at the time the St. Louis Hawks, and he'd been on the Hawks his whole career. I believe when they were the Milwaukee Hawks, he was dominating. He had 29 points in the 1958 to 59 season, and in their championship year, he scored a little bit less, so averaging 24.6 points a game. And he was just a great player. I mean, he was the generation of the 1950s. The 1950s was mainly about Bob Pettit, George Mikan, Bob Cousy, even Bill Russell coming towards the late 1950s. He was coming up. It started to become the Bill Russell era. But at the time, you see that Bob Pettit was him. He was the first MVP in NBA history. I actually believe he won the first 2 MVPs. And you can just continue to look through these stats. They're awesome. I mean, just look at the stats. He played from age 22 to 32. And yeah, I'm just going to have you guys look through the stats real quick. He's always been a solid free throw shooter, field goal percentage. He's great scorer. Bob Pettit was so great of a scorer in the 50s. Probably the best scorer in the 50s. Alright, now that we went over Bob Pettit's career stats, I would like to go through the Hawks' playoff appearances. It might seem like they haven't made many playoff appearances, but they have made a good amount of playoff appearances. In fact, they've made playoff appearances against the Celtics, and the Celtics, as we know, is the Hawks' rivalry. That's it. The Hawks' rivalry. They've had history with the Celtics. That's why you guys know that I hate the Celtics, because they're my number one favorite team, the Sixers rivalry, and my number two favorite team, the Atlanta Hawks rivalry. But let us get into their all-time playoff appearances. So, since they've been a franchise, let's look at their playoff appearances. So, we got this, their first season, a missed playoff appearance. We have another missed the playoffs. This time, they went against the Packers. I didn't even know there was a team called the Packers in the NBA at the time. But 1949-50 season was their first. And this is where they lost in the conference semis as a result. They 2-1. They missed the next year, missed the next year after that, missed another year again, missed some more. This is the era where, as you can see, Bob Pettit comes into the team. Now, they beat the Lakers 2-1 in the conference semis, but lose to the Pistons in the conference finals 3-2. This was their, so they were up 2-0 but lost 3 in a row. So they're adjusting with the Bob Pettit. So let's look at this, 1956-57. So they lose in the conference finals to the Lakers. They beat the Lakers 3-0. They sweep them. And then in the finals, look at the finals where they lose 4-3 in the finals. In the NBA finals. Then, how about 1957-1958 season, where they win in the conference finals 4-1 over the Pistons, and then NBA finals. As a result, they are able to win 4-2 over the Celtics in the finals. And now, you guys might be wondering, wait, I thought the Hawks were in the Eastern Conference. Well, why are they playing the Celtics in the finals or in the Lakers in, the conference finals? That's because at the time, the Hawks were the St. Louis Hawks, so they were in the Western Conference. The 1958-59 season was a loss in the conference finals to the Lakers 4-2. It's were their first loss in their history to the Lakers in the playoffs. Then you go to another year where they win in 7 against the Lakers in the conference finals, but lose to the Celtics in the NBA finals in 7. That was a year where they could have had a chance. They continue to make playoff runs like here, but they just fall short again in the NBA Finals to the Celtics. So this was all the Bob Pettit era where the Hawks were a popular team in this time, where they were confident that they had their whole lineup at this time. Then they missed playoffs this year, but then they come back, make the semifinals, and beat the Pistons 3-1, and then they lose in the conference finals to the Lakers 4-3. It's just they are getting opportunities in that and making the finals. So they beat the Lakers in the second round. They are the Wizards. And so they played this team in the semifinals, lost 3-1. But then they build up their confidence and sweep the Bullets, who were the Wizards, like I said, but then lost to the Lakers in 7 in the conference finals. Now, this is where you see they beat the Bulls, but then lose to the Warriors. This is just more of the same, and they can't even make it past the semis in this series. So this is without Bob Pettit, and this is where they start to struggle. So they lose in the conference finals 4-1, even though they beat the Rockets pretty well. And now they get swept in the conference finals. Now they lose in 5 to the Knicks, and now they lose in 6 to the Celtics. As a result, they just continue to downfall in the semifinals, losing 6 to the Celtics again in the 70s. Now this is where they start missing playoffs. I mean, guys, they missed the playoffs a lot. But now this year, the 1977 to 78 season, they make a playoff again. And look, they lose 2-0 in the first round to the Washington Bullets. Then they start to regain some confidence by beating the Rockets 2-0, losing to the Bullets 4-3. And this is where you're going to see the Dikembe Mutombo, Lou Hudson, or Dominique Wilkins are like somewhere around this time period. You're going to see Hawks rising a little bit. This is where they lose to my Sixers in the conference semifinals in 5, which I wish the Sixers could win a conference semis game in today's NBA. But anyway, they lost here. And they miss a playoff, then lose 2-0 to my Sixers in the opening round of the 1981-82 season. So then we move on. Losing an opening round to the Celtics again. So this is where they start playing Sixers-Celtics, because this is where they are an Eastern Conference team, and they are at the Atlanta Hawks instead of the St. Louis Hawks. They lose to the Bucks in the 83-84 season. This is the Jordan era, where you're gonna see like this is the Michael Jordan era. So in the 1984-85 season, they missed another playoff, but 85-86 season was their season where they beat the Pistons 3-1. This right here was probably one of the most famous series that the Hawks have ever played in. They played in the second round against the Celtics, lost in 5, but it was so much hatred going on and just a lot. And I believe they just kept trash talking. It was a fun series to watch. Here they lose to the Pistons. Here they lose to the Celtics again in the conference semis, and this was another famous series. So the 80s was all about Dominique Wilkins versus Larry Bird, where they were fighting for the playoffs. They were doing what they need to just fight for the playoffs. 1988-89 is a loss to the Bucks. I mean, that's an opening round. And now this is where they miss the playoffs, but then lose another opening round to the Pistons and missing the playoffs, losing 3-0 to the Bulls. This is the year the Bulls won their third championship, courtesy of Michael Jordan. Now, 93-94, they beat their division rival, the Heat, 3-2. They lose to the Pacers, 4-2. and then they get swept 3-0 by the Pacers the next year. They make it to the semis, lose to Shaquille O'Neal and the Orlando Magic. Then they lose in 5 to the Bulls. So this is where it starts to get bad. I mean, the Hawks were a talented team. Like, they, as you can see, they have a lot of history here. Who's ever heard of the Hawks losing to the Hornets in a playoff series? When was the last time the Hornets made the playoffs? But they beat the Pistons 3-2, and then get swept by the Knicks. I don't know if this was the exact series. It may have been an older series or like a big game, but like there was a time where Dominique Wilkins and Patrick Ewing went at it. They were scoring buckets. You know, Patrick Ewing had like 47 and Dominique Wilkins had like 53. And it was just back and forth action. Then the 2000s, they miss a bunch of playoffs. The Hawks were a terrible team in the 2000s. This is a year where they lose to the Celtics again in the first round in 7. But this is where Joe Johnson comes in. I mean, 2008-9, they beat the Heat in 7. Then lose to LeBron and the Cavs in 4. It was a sweep. Then 2009-10, they beat the Bucks in 7, but get swept again in the semis to the Magic. Then they lose again in the semis, but this time in 6. And they get their revenge in the first round over the Magic. And this year, in the 2010s, they pretty much win, make the playoffs every year. Cause they they lose to the Celtics. Lose to the Pacers. Lose to the Pacers again, this time in 7. Then this was the year where people thought that the Hawks would make the finals against the Warriors. This was a year that the Hawks roster would just come in clutch, even beat LeBron James, one of the best all time. This is where people had faith in the Hawks offense. But they beat the Nets in 6, beat the Wizards in 6, but they get swept by the Cavs again. Man, oh man. Now next year, they beat the Celtics, which their rivalry. They beat the Celtics in 6, and again they get swept by the Cavs. Then that next year after that, they lose to the Wizards in a sweep. And then this year, they were the worst in the league. I can remember this. Then this is where Trae Young came to their team. It was Trae Young, Kevin Huerter, and Amari Spellman was their big draft picks that they had. And Trae Young brought them to a 12th seed, from a 15 seed to a 12th seed single-handedly as a rookie player, which is great. Then next year they fall off a little bit, but Trae got better. Trae Young averaged 30 points in this season. Then this was a huge year. This was probably one of the best seasons in franchise history. This was beautiful. The 2020-21 season, they dominate the New York Knicks in 5 when they were expected to lose, mainly because the Knicks had home court advantage. But Trae Young single-handedly dominated this team. They silenced the crowd every night in and night out. Then, against my Sixers, they win in 7. Now, this was a series that I try to put behind me because it's the Sixers, but at the same time also, I mean, it's they're good for the Hawks that they won, but I would love to see the Sixers win instead. This was a great way to win, though, by winning on the road in Game 7, when the Sixers fans go crazy, because if I know Philly fans, and then Philly fans go nuts, then they lose to the Bucks in 6. I think it was the Trae Young injury. I blame the ref for stepping on his ankle on this one. Hawks would have won. This was a year where the Bucks won the title because they had their team opponents had many injuries. Then this was a horrible series. They lose to the Heat in 5 in the first round. This was a bad series. Then the next year after that, it's 2022 to 23, where they lose in 6 to the Celtics. So they pushed them a little bit further, but they lose. This was the Hawks' playoff history. Now, if you guys want to look, just look up, Hawks history. Atlanta Hawks playoff history, and the first screen that comes off, the playoff history of the Hawks. They played a lot of games against the Celtics. Okay, so now that the Hawks playoff appearances, as you can see, even though the Hawks have only won one championship, they've made the playoffs a lot of times in their franchise. Probably one of the most out of any franchise in the NBA. They were one of the original NBA teams, like the 1946. 1946 was when the NBA was founded. And, the Hawks, were the Milwaukee Hawks. Then they moved to St. Louis, and now they're Atlanta Hawks. So everything is history. Everything was history. Now, as you know, the Celtics are their rivalry. And now, the next thing, what is next for the Hawks? What is next? And I think they need to trade DeJounte Murray. They need to do that to get better. But I think eventually the Hawks will be a team that's not going to be making the playoffs for a while. And they'll go a few years without making the playoffs. And then make the playoffs again. But be a better team. Because this is what I think it is. I think this is one of the stupidest decisions that the Hawks have done in a while, in a long, long time. They gave away John Collins for Rudy Gay, and then they didn't even keep him. They have Patty Mills that never plays. It was stupid. They could have gotten Pascal Siakam. The Raptors were willing to do it. They were willing to give them Pascal Siakam, but they declined, and they said, "Oh, I'm just gonna take a 35-year-old who never plays." Yeah, that's real smart. But I want to hear from you guys. Who do you think is the best player in Hawks history? I thought it was Dominique Wilkins at first. If you take a look, let's go ahead and look at Dominique Wilkins' stats real fast, and then let's compare it to Bob Pettit's. Okay, we got to his stats. Now, it's actually pretty much the same. It's pretty much the same as Bob Pettit's. When you talk about points per game, especially that 30-point per game season that he had, that he was one of the most dominant NBA players in that time period, the 1985-86 season. He averaged 2 steals a game almost, and then his free throw percentage was, again, similar to Bob Pettit's, just a little better. Field goal percentage, I mean, 3-point percentage was awful. And then, but like, you look at his field goal percentage and it was good. So the stats are pretty similar, maybe just a little bit better. And also, he played for the Celtics. Played for the Clippers. And I mean, like, he played for a lot. He played for the Spurs and the Magic. I mean, like, there was seasons where he was injured for a while, but like, it's like, I don't know why Dominique Wilkins. So like, because it's a hard decision. But I think I'm gonna come down to a decision where I think the best player in Hawks history is... Wait a minute. Before I say who I think is the best in Hawks history, you have to subscribe right now for more content. I'm on the road to 250 subscribers by the end of April, and I need your guys' help. Subscribe, like this video. Let's see if we can get 5 likes on this video, and turn on your notifications so you won't miss any videos. And do you guys want to see me talk about your guys' team next? And the next video will be a long video because I'm going to do Boston Celtics documentary next. I'm going to try to go alphabetical order, but let me know your favorite team, and I will be sure to do documentaries about your guys' favorite teams. But my opinion, I think the best player in Hawks history is Bob Pettit. Bob Pettit won them the title. Dominique Wilkins had better players around him, but Bob Pettit was the one who got the MVPs and won that title for the Hawks. And that was their only title, 1958. The St. Louis Hawks were the champions, and they were very popular. Bob Pettit made them really popular back in that time period. And Dominique Wilkins wasn't even a Hawk his whole career. He was most famous for the Hawks, but he only played, his last few seasons weren't with the Hawks. Bob Pettit stayed until the end, played 10 seasons for the Hawks, won them a championship, won 2 MVPs, and his stats say it all. This was the Atlanta Hawks documentary. I had a very great time doing this video with you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.